was hoping you could talk a bit more about, I guess, sort of your research into co-working at the very beginning. So when you were at Herman Miller, you began exploring co-working as sort of an edge condition of the future of work, and there were very interesting cultural variables that go beyond this. James, in the beginning, talked about the notion of co-working in these spaces as a solution to real estate challenges, that basically small companies that couldn't get 10-year leases. But there's a whole cultural and value dimension to this as well. So if you could talk a bit about that.
Sure, yeah. From my perspective, I don't know if you guys can hear me. From my perspective, I was really interested in seeing the way these environments were emerging at the edge of what I called mainstream work environments, traditionally corporate environments. And I think the distinction that I was seeing early on was that the office as we know it it's a paradigm that we've inherited from about 40 years ago after the development of systems furniture, as well as an industrial age management theory and management structure for companies and for organizations. I think all the economic drivers that you discussed earlier as an opening, the concept of acceleration and higher speed and the untethering of the worker from the desk, from mobility into the city, created the preconditions of self-organizing workspaces, which looked and took the names of co-working, hacker spaces, maker spaces, all sorts of different types of spaces. At the root, from a research perspective, what I was really looking at were new performance drivers. What makes these spaces good? And building on what Miguel has said, there's obviously a different understanding of the physical space, which leads to different design requirements and different design aesthetics. But there's also a different culture. They're fundamentally driven on values such as openness, sharing, and co-creation, and creating new ideas together, which is another way of saying starting up new businesses that didn't exist before. So the mashup logic that I was seeing in these environments created a watershed effect that created the preconditions for space to look differently, to perform differently, for the social contract between you and the office or your office owner, whether it's a company like WeWork or whether it's an actual corporation, totally different set of connections. And in general led to different types of behavior in space. So things like accelerated learning, serendipity, concepts like co-creating new knowledge are actual outcomes of working in this type of way and working in these environments. And these are entirely new types of performances in the office. We haven't seen those before.
What's interesting is that when you talk about what's changing, what's different, what can often be confusing is that there are different levels or different things happening at the same time, all loosely generated by different technologies, but you have companies that are organized in different ways, like you're talking about, that are free to work in more liquid kind of ways and reorganize themselves. That's partially a product of the technology that enables them to do that with fewer people. But you also have people, as we heard in the previous panel, working actually in technology, because some people doing co-working they're just distributing food or something. It has nothing to do with technology whatsoever. But then you also have the tech sector and all the startups the tech startups that we've been talking about in the last panel that are also working in different ways because of technology, because of what they're actually doing. And then, and so you have these small companies, and then they need a space they don't want to just be a little isolated. But even if they could get a 10-year lease, they don't really want to be isolated. They want a kind of a broader kind of support, both community support and other kinds of support, infrastructural support. And so co-working facilities or accelerators allow, incubators, whatever you call it, give them that kind of support to be able to, socialize with each other, to create new connections, and to work, bigger than their actual size.
Yeah, I think at the base, when early on in my research, I realized that some of the early cultural leaders of this co-working Google group, for example, one of the early networks of people interested in talking about this, used to look at these environments that have evolved over the last 5 years, obviously, as a physical world manifestation of net culture, of internet culture. And I think that sort of sets that stage for all these new performances.